Hi, welcome back to my channel, and today I want to do probably a controversial video, a small video, about a controversy that has blown up in the last few months in the world of film that I didn't know about till this weekend. And it concerns one of my favourite directors, Abbas Kiarostami, who's an Iranian director. He started working in the 1970s for the sort of Children's Film Foundation out there. Then he graduated to feature films. And in the 90s, he was discovered by the West, and he became a very popular filmmaker in the West. And I think, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that for my generation of cinephiles, he was the #1 director. Like some people, in the 60s, Godard was their main director. Some people in the 70s, the sort of new German cinema was theirs. For my generation, who grew up with Star Wars and Spielberg, the sort of world cinema director was Kiarostami. But in the last few months, Kiarostami has been mired in controversy. And what has happened is this. In the early 2000s, he made this film, 10. Now, this was celebrated at the time as being a huge departure for Kiarostami into a more experimental avant-garde style of filmmaking. Basically, it's called 10 because it's made up of 10 scenes. And each of the scenes is about a female driver driving a car around Tehran. And in each of the scenes, she has a passenger. Now, the film was made with a camera either looking at the driver or at the passenger, and sometimes going between the two. So that's what makes up the conversations. There was no other team involved. There was no director there, no cinematographer, nothing. It was all done on small DV cameras. And this was regarded as a huge experimental step forward in Kiarostami's work. And the film is really a reflection on the place of women in Iran and the struggles they face. So she has a young boy who is seeming to take on the sort of male chauvinism of his father and is rejecting his mother. We hear one of her friends is having trouble in her relationship to the extent where she actually shaves her head off in a kind of protest, an emotional moment of protest. She speaks to a sex worker at night who she picks up and gives a lift to, etc., etc. The controversy around the film is twofold. Mania Akbari, who is the lead actress in the film, has now claimed, in an article which I will give a link to, that the film is hers, not Kiarostami's. Not only that, she also claims that Kiarostami, during the making of the film and later in the promotion of the film, sexually assaulted her twice. And now, because of this, she wants to try and remove the film from circulation so that it's not shown. And as I understand it, this is already happening. The BFI apparently withdrew the film from a Kiarostami retrospective. And apparently, this is all stuff I've heard, that Criterion won't release it on their list of titles because of this. So it's already having an effect. Now, what does Mania Akbari claim? She claims that this film was actually started by her. It was her own project. She is a filmmaker and artist in her own right. And she started making this film with her friends. I mean, many of the people in the film are either her sister, her family, or her friends. So it has some credence behind it. And the nature of the footage is more direct and raw than Kiarostami had ever used before. So it does seem that there is some credence behind what she's saying, that she started this project herself. Then she met Kiarostami. Kiarostami, this senior filmmaker, this filmmaker that she admired, took the project over. He saw something in it that he liked and that he thought he could do something with. And he took the project over. And he ended up editing it all in the end. Right? But she claims that the original idea and the sort of nature of the film was hers. And then she also claims that during the course of the production, he sexually assaulted her at her home. And later, during a promotion of the film, he also sexually assaulted her, I believe, while they were in London or Paris, I can't remember. Now, where I want to start with this, I don't want to talk about the sexual assaults because I wasn't there. I don't know either of the two people involved. I can't tell whether they're telling the truth or not. It worries me these days that so many people in these situations automatically take the side of one or the other, when we can't possibly know. This is between Mania Akbari, Abbas Kiarostami, and the law. What I want to talk about is the idea of the auteurship of the film. Now, I should preface this from the beginning with a personal reminiscence of this film. I first saw this film, I think it was released in 2002, it was, yes, and it was premiered in England at the ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Arts, and Mania Akbari talks about this in her statement. And it was done as a special day. The ICA built a whole day around it, Women in Iran, right? And the major point of it was the screening of 10. I was there. And Mania Akbari talks about this event at length. I was at that event. I remember it very well. And there was an incident that I've never forgotten. The interviewer asked Mania Akbari, "What's the most important thing to you in the world?" And she said, "Well, obviously, my husband and my children." And it was a Women in Iran a day, and most of the audience were feminists. I was one of the very few men. She was booed. A lot of the English feminists in the audience booed her. And her response was fantastic. She just sat there regally, and she didn't say a word, very impassive. And I deeply admired her. And in contrast, I felt that the women who were booing her in the audience came across as adolescent and stupid. Of course, our family and our friends, the people we care about, are the closest thing to us. Of course they are. What a thing to boo. And I really deeply admired Mania Akbari's grace under that pressure. And I came away from that session thinking that this woman was not just an actress, she was a crucial creative part of the film. Now, in her statement, Mania Akbari complains that Kiarostami reduced her to the level of being an actress. Well, I can say this to Mania Akbari if she's watching, I never thought that. I always thought that you were a crucial creative part of this movie. A third little reflection on that day. Kiarostami did actually, to be fair, kind of take over the interview. It was supposed to be about women in Iran, and incidentally I think this film is a brilliant portrait of women in Iran, or women everywhere, and I think it's a very beautiful and valuable film. But he took over the interview a bit, and it became more about him. And then towards the end, he told the audience, look, I've been experimenting. And he said, I've been filming these two things near the Caspian Sea, I think it was. And he said, would you watch them with me? And he came into the audience and he put on these two scenes. And there were two scenes from the next film he was going to make called Five. If you've seen the film, it was the one with the log being washed up and down on the ocean shore. And the one of the dogs in the distance where he left the camera on and the exposure went up. You'll know what I mean if you've seen that film. And we watched them together and afterwards he asked for comments. I'm just putting that in there because this is an experimental filmmaker who enjoys experimenting. Does that chime with what Mania Akbari says about the authorship of this film? I'll leave that for you to decide. So those are my reflections on the film, and I was very touched by this film. I think it's a very beautiful film. And this leads me to what I want to say about it. Mania Akbari now, because of her anger at what Kiarostami did to her, allegedly, right? But let's say it's true, is now trying to stop this film being shown. And it seems that organisations are going along with it. And I think this is wrong. And I'm saying this to Mania Akbari, if she's ever watching this, as much as to anyone else. You contributed to, perhaps even made, a film that has touched so many people and is a beautiful film. Whatever the horribleness behind this film, the film itself stands. It's touched many people, it's part of film history, and it has a lot to say about women's position in Iran. Right? You made this, be proud of it. By all means say your truth about Kiarostami, but don't destroy the film, and don't stop the audience watching what they want to watch. You see, what worries me about this, what we call in England cancel culture, is this. I'm a firm believer that a film is not the property of its filmmaker, nor is it the property of a studio. It is the property of the people who consume it once it is released, right? We have an ownership of this film. It's touched us, it's become part of our history, part of our cultural and social history, part of our emotional history. What right has that to be taken away? If it's true that the BFI and Criterion are censoring this film, and it is censorship, what they're effectively saying is, yes, we agree that the filmmaker is the owner of the film. Now that seems strange to me from apparently leftist organisations that you would think that. So you're going along with a capitalist idea that the person who produces is the owner. What about the audience? What about the collective? That's the first point. And the second point I wanted to make was this, that Mania Akbari wants to stop this film being shown, to stop any value accruing from it, from any money being made from it, which then suggests that the main value of a film is its monetary value, as a commodity, rather than as a work of art or something that touches us. I'm surprised that she would say that. As an artist who cares about humanity and about, issues of women and women's rights, why would you just see film as a commodity, something only to make money? So I'd say to Mania Akbari, believe in your own work. This is a beautiful piece of work. If you were responsible for it, don't censor it. Don't take it away from us. It's beautiful, and you should be proud of it. By all means, tell your truth of what happened behind the film. But don't take away the film, and don't censor the audience. Thank you.